Welcome to Careers Unwrapped, where we delve into real-life career stories from successful people who've been through it all, the ups and the downs. We'll get their raw, honest, actionable advice and be the careers talk they wish they'd had when they started out. As someone who has had a varied career, from soldier to salesman, expedition leader to entrepreneur, he knows firsthand that your career doesn't always lead you where you expect it to. Here's your host, Mark Fawcett.
Hello, and welcome to Careers Unwrapped. Today, I'm your host, Mark Fawcett, and with me is Antonio Cinelli. Now, Antonio has 17 years experience in the fashion industry, but also in a critical set of functions you may not always think about, areas around production and product engineering. We'll dig a little bit into that. He's worked with Burberry, with Bennett, AllSaints, now with Belstaff. He also speaks 4 languages, but we are definitely going to stick with English for now. So let's find out more about working in fashion. Antonio, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. And hello, everyone.
So I think let's start off with what your current role is. You're at Belstaff. What exactly is your title? What are your responsibilities in this job?
Yes. So I'm the head of production. I am leading 3 teams currently. One is production. The other one is technical or product engineering. And the third one is sustainability and compliance.
Let's dig into the middle one of those, product engineering. So if you're just a customer thinking, well, I just go and buy my product, whether you're buying industry-specific things, which I know Belstaff does, or just buying for yourself, what's the product engineer done to make that happen?
Okay, so there are a couple of things. First of all, if you sell something saying that is waterproof, you have to sell something that it is waterproof, right? So you don't want to go into a festival and then to be completely drenched underneath your jacket. And that's one bit. The other part is that you want your clothes to fit perfectly on you. And we've got a team that is dedicated to check every millimeter of the garment to make sure that whoever goes into the store can have a garment that fits them.
And so how does it end up sometimes that if you buy a medium, let's say, from one brand and a medium from another brand, they fit completely differently?
Well, nowadays it's always more difficult because, the size and fit is kind of different according to the age groups. Especially if you are like an 18 years old, you might want to wear something a bit baggy, right? And an M for them would be actually an XL for brand like Belstaff. It's really difficult. So I believe that you need to understand what are your reference brands. And when you go to shop on the website, it's always written on the garment how much is the fit. So, for example, if you are looking for an oversized fit, you will see this on the website. Instead, if you want a skinny fit, as well is going to be explained. So it's really important that we read everything before purchasing something online. Otherwise, we have to return a lot of our purchases.
And where does your role fit in the process between the designer up front, the manufacturer, and the customer? Where do you fit into that?
I fit exactly in the middle. So I'm going to explain to you in general how the fashion industry works. So, of course, there are the designers that sketch a collection. Once we've got these sketches, there is a team, usually it's called product development. And this team makes these sketches into prototypes, a reality. So once we have all these prototypes, we all sit together on a table, we discuss about them, and we decide what it can be commercial for the next season. At that point, we will invite buyers from different groups, for example, House of Fraser or Selfridges, and they will come and they will say, 100 pieces of this to 100 pieces of that. And at the end, you've got like a shopping list that for each garment, you've got a number. And then I start my job. So once I've got the shopping list and I know how much to buy, I've got experience in factories. So depending on the quantities, I would say, you know what, this product with this type of quantities is better if we place it in Italy or in Vietnam, or depending on what margin we want to sell it for and what quantity we have, I will be able to position this garment in a specific region. From the moment I choose the factory, there is a lot of work that goes between the product engineering team and the factory, because they have to make this garment perfect from a quality perspective and a fit perspective, right? So quality, as I said before, for example, if you want to claim that that garment has got some specific like water repellent or waterproof, we do all the tests to make sure that that garment actually it is water repellent or waterproof. And then we have to make sure that it fits. Once we are happy with the fit, we start with the production. The production is a very complicated bit because it's very mathematical. You have to calculate how many weeks you need to produce the garment. And not only the garment, how many weeks you need to order all the components that go into that garment, right? So once you do all this mathematical stuff, you know when more or less is going to be your launch in store. And you have to keep on top of the factory to make sure that they are delivering the product on time. So once the products are actually made and they are shipped out, my job finishes and it goes into another team that is the logistics team that will make sure that all the partners and all our stores will have the goods.
And in your experience, how close are designers to the reality of production? Do they design knowing exactly how this is going to be made? Or sometimes is it just beautiful drawings that you look at and think, that's going to be really tough to make?
Well, it's very important to have someone in my position in a very good relationship with the designer, because in this way we can commercialize a product from their idea. For example, if I know that I can only spend a specific amount of money to produce a garment, and I see this beautiful sketch with 100 million different things, I need to go to the designer and say, look, it's a fantastic sketch. However, it's not going to be possible for us to commercialize it for that specific price. And that's also when you get a bit of the division between fast fashion, high street, accessible luxury and luxury. In accessible luxury and luxury, the designer will have some options that they're not restricted by spend. So they can actually design whatever they want, and we can spend as much money as we want because those are the top pieces that make fashion. But then, of course, a lot of the money doesn't come from this part, right? So we also have something a bit more commercial that is still very beautiful, but a bit easier and also can sell to the masses.
Now, us outside the industry will get our impression of the fashion industry mostly from television, from movies, from books. And it comes across in those variants, you know, as dramatic, as emotional, as designers, as sort of prima donnas. And how close is that to the reality of your experience as you've gone through your career?
It happens. It happens, and sometimes it's completely heartbreaking. I'm going back like over 10 years. I remember that we had a fashion show about in a couple of weeks. We had all the material and the factories were doing all the garments for the fashion show. And then this creative director said, I changed idea. This is all shit. So now I want this. So we were actually, you can't do that. I said, I can do whatever I want. And we were literally working 24 hours crying. And the factory as well was working very hard. But then we were able to deliver the vision of the designer, and it was very well received. So yes, sometimes, especially on high luxury, it's true, we can have some of these prima donna behaviors, but it's not the rule. It's not the rule. It's like in anything in life, sometimes some people are a bit more crazy than others, but definitely it's true. There are some that are like this.
Yeah, many years ago, my wife worked with Versace and she worked with Prada, and some of the stories that came out were quite eye-opening. But I'm not here to interview her. We're talking about you. So what you do now sounds really interesting because it's obviously absolutely critical to the process. In other words, nothing appears in the catalogs, nothing appears online, nothing appears on the shelves without the role that you do in this. So how did you get there, and what are the training and skills that you need?
Okay, so my story is completely random. So I came after my master's degree in economics to have like 1 year in London and do just enjoying life. However, after a couple of weeks, I met some people in a pub. They were Italian. We started to speak. And they said, "What are you doing?" "Ah, well, I work in fashion. I work for Burberry." I said, "Oh, that's going to be interesting." So I said, "Oh, maybe I could start to do something there, because I didn't have much money at the time." So I said, "Okay, let me send a CV." And yes, I started as a temporary data entry. What I was doing is basically inputting numbers into a system from 9 o'clock in the morning until 6 p.m. I didn't even understand what really I was doing. I was just literally inputting number. And then I started to learn what that meant. And because I had a lot of training in mathematics, and I was good with numbers, I said, actually, this instead of a part-time job just because I don't know what to do, it can be something very interesting. And I started to study Excel. Excel is fundamental for what I do. Everything is done in Excel. Without Excel, my role wouldn't exist. I mean, it's super important. So my advice for everyone that is coming out of a course or university is just to do Excel. Otherwise, without this knowledge and without a preparation in numbers, you won't be able to succeed within the production industry. I mean, there are a lot of roles in the fashion industry. Some are much more creative of what I'm doing, right? My part is not the sexy part. My part is trying to make money for the business, try to find a factory that can hit the delivery date that we want, for the quality that we want, and for the margin that we want. And in order to achieve that, there is a lot of planning. And to plan, you have to have a set of skills. And the basic one is understanding numbers and calculations.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned in there the finding of the factory. I think that's an interesting area because over the years, individual brands and the industry overall has had some sticky, problematic moments with sourcing, treating workers fairly and unfairly in less developed countries, rates of pay, environmental impacts, sustainability. What's it like in the modern fashion industry from the area you work in terms of making sure that the sourcing you've got in place, the factories you're choosing are meeting all the ethical standards that your customers want, your shareholders want?
Look, Mark, it's really easy, to be honest. I've been asking myself this question for many years. How can this still happen? It shouldn't happen because internationally, we know that a factory has to have some requirements and has to be audited. So in the moment that I need a new factory, when I go and visit factory, I do not even go and visit the factories that they don't have those requirements, right? If everyone would do that, we won't have these issues. But Some brands, luckily none of the brands that I worked for, but some brands, in order to pay a little bit less, they would want to go with factories that maybe they are not fully certified. And, a certification costs money, so the factory needs to invest. And then in order to pay for that, we'll maybe charge the brand a little bit more because, of course, they had to cover the cost of the audit. But yeah, regarding myself, I never visit a factory that doesn't have the basic requirements, international requirements, and all the big brands they operate in this way.
And so what I take from that is there's really no excuse to get it wrong. And when people do get it wrong, it's because they're trying to go really cheap, trying to cut corners. And that might lead us into the area that people think of the terms fast fashion, throwaway fashion, those sort of, obviously not what you do in your role and with your brand at Belstaff, but
absolutely, not an excuse.
So the brands you have worked with, Burberry, LK Bennett, AllSaints, Belstaff, what's your highlight from each one of those? What's the sort of the best bit of each one of those jobs and brand environments?
All right. So I think that the most exciting one for sure is Burberry. I stayed at Burberry for 7 years. And when I joined Burberry, it was small. I remember that we were in Piccadilly Circus. We were renting 2 floors of it was kind of a skyscraper. And it was like 32 of us. It was really small. And then it started growing. And by the time that I left, it was 2 whole buildings with over 1,200 people. So I lived really the expansion years of Burberry, which is great because, when there is expansion and everyone is buying the brand, everyone is happy. So I just lived a very happy 7 years. There were a lot of promotions involved because, of course, if you were working hard and the company was growing, there were a lot of opportunities. And that's the biggest highlight, let's say. Then LK Bennett, the highlight was Spain. Let me explain. So the majority of factories, they were in Spain, in the area of Alicante. And for my work, I need to travel a lot. I remember that I had to spend so much time in Alicante, and I really, really loved it because I couldn't believe that that role that was a job was kind of a hobby. So I was just, if I had a few hours free at the end of the day or between one meeting and the other, I was actually going to the beach. So it was a real, something really, really different. I really loved it.
Yeah. And then you moved on to AllSaints.
Yes, AllSaints was my first bigger role where I had a lot more responsibility. I was overseeing all the categories. And it was the first time that I moved into a leadership role. So when you move into a leadership role, there is not only yourself and doing the job really good, right? But there is also making sure that your team is on board with you, making sure that all the suppliers that you work with are happy. And there were a lot of changes during those years because we restructured the team, let's say. We restructured the team. So we had I was brought on board to completely rehire a new production team in London. So there was a lot of changes. And I remember that I always needed to be really, really focused, both with the interviews that I was doing, because for me it was also very important, not only to hire people that were qualified, but also hire people that I knew we could get along, because when you've got a project of that size, you have to work a lot of hours. You have to work a lot, and spending a lot of time with someone that you might not like, it can be really, really difficult. So that was very important. And then a lot of travels. I remember that I was maybe going to India for 3 nights, coming back for a couple of nights, then going to Portugal, and one night after going to Hong Kong. So it was a very hectic period of my career, which was important because really made me the leader that I am today, and stepped me up from a normal executive role into a leader role.
And in that period then, from AllSaints to where you are now at Belstaff, you will have developed as a leader and as a manager of people as well. How could you describe your approach to leadership now, or your style, or the way you think and act as a leader?
I think that to be a good leader, you have to have your team on board with you. If you do not have them on board with you, you're not a good leader. So first of all, I always defend my team. If something goes wrong, if I know that they've done a mistake, I'm not the one going to them, what did you do? First of all, I'm going to always defend them and say, look, let me see what we've done. If we've done a mistake, why did we do it? And I will always take the blame if something went wrong. And then on the other side, I will take the individual later on, and I will sit with him or her, try to understand what has happened, if it was a genuine mistake, or if it was because this person didn't do what he was supposed to. But for me, my team is really important. I really have got a good understanding of what their needs are, and they've got a very good understanding of where my bar is. So they know from the very beginning where I want to go. We see together the end goal, and then we go for it.
What do you think the difference is now within you as the leader you are now, as opposed to the leader you were when you first got that responsibility?
Well, I am much more empathic. I'm much more empathic. So before I was driven by the objective, the company objective, by the results, mostly. Before there was that. So I needed to get that over the line. I needed to accomplish that objective. And I was like really stressing people out if we were not achieving it as fast as I wanted to. And now, instead, I sit back, I do a plan, I explain it to my team, and together we go towards that goal as a team. So yeah, it took a few years. So I'm sorry to everyone that had the previous leader, but nobody is born with all the knowledge.
I think that's so true. The first time that anybody is put into a leadership position, they'll look back several years later and realize those first few people for whom they were responsible were actually just the guinea pigs and the test case on which they practice. And hopefully people who become good leaders were at least thoughtful and empathetic enough to think, what am I doing well? What aren't I doing well? But you're not going to get it perfect from day one. And so your route along the way has been fascinating, from what you've described, from Burberry to LK Bennett to AllSaints and onto Belstaff now. So I almost wonder now if you could, with a bit of hindsight, go back to 18-year-old Antonio and say, look, this is my advice. Don't do this and do this. What might you say to your younger self to advise them in progressing their career?
I would say study Excel. Study Excel, because once you learn it, you make your life so much easier. And also listen to the people that are a bit more senior than you. I was really cocky sometimes. I say, oh yeah, I know it all. And now I would say, actually, they've been, I really got respect for hierarchy now. But before, when I was younger, I was thinking that it didn't matter how long a person was in the role and all of that. And I think that also nowadays, this is where a lot of companies believe that anyone can do the career as fast as they want, right? So if you are maybe 20 years old, you think, I should have that managerial position. But maybe it's true. However, I believe that experience, it comes with age. Experience comes with years. And I would tell myself to be respectful of more senior people and also try to absorb as much as possible.
So with that earlier age cockiness in mind, asking you for an honest answer here, what can you think back as one of the biggest mistakes or the biggest screw ups you've made along the way that you look back and go, oh, I can't believe I did that?
So, well, there was, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago, a manager, and I was like, I don't remember if I was an assistant or a coordinator. Can I say name? Yeah, let me say the name. There was this manager called Paola Zanetto, and I just couldn't tender, right? So whatever she was telling me, I was not doing it or trying to prove her wrong, because me and her, even if I was an assistant and she was a manager, we both were reporting in the same director. So I didn't feel that she could do anything to me, right? So she was trying to telling me stuff and I was just not doing it. And that was really, really painful, because then my boss at a point came to me and said, Antonio, you need to listen to Paola Zanetto. She's like older than you are. I can't believe it. And then, I felt really, really embarrassed because I thought that I was really smart, but actually I wasn't.
Yeah, a learning curve we've all been on. But I then got to be fair, and I've got to ask you more about highlights and success. And even though, you still hopefully have a lot more to do and a lot more interesting opportunities ahead of you. But just so far looking back, what are, one or two maybe of the highlights thing? I loved what we did there. I'm proud of what we achieved.
Yeah, so without saying the name of the company, because some information are, as you can imagine, classified. In one of these company, I had a real problem of margin. So we were producing these beautiful garments in Italy. Beautiful, beautiful. However, we were not taking any money because, there's only so much you can sell, right? And the margin was weak. So we really didn't know what to do. And then we said, you know what, let's try to source this somewhere else. Let's try to go to the Far East. And everyone was, no, but you're crazy. I said, guys, honestly, do we want to make money or not? Because if we do want to make money, well, that's the way. Because I'm responsible here for the supply chain, right? And I am not achieving my goal if we stay in Italy. I'm sure that in Vietnam there are, I already heard that there were some very good factories for that specific product in Vietnam. And then I jumped on a plane and I went sourcing and I found this factory and everyone was telling me, Antonio, you're crazy. And then a lot of people from the commercial team is the team that deals with House of Fraser, Arrows, etc. So the commercial team were saying, Antonio, but you cannot change the country of origin of one of our bestsellers. So I had basically everyone against me. And finally, I was able to deliver 14 points of margin from Vietnam with a perfect product, and nobody could actually see the difference. So that was one of my biggest achievements.
Fantastic. I think it's been so interesting what we've covered in this short time, Antonio, because from a listener's perspective, it's been a really interesting insight into your area within the overall fashion industry. You described it as not the sexy part of the industry, but perhaps it's not the most sexy part of quite a sexy industry. And and clearly involved in it. It's a very commercial role. There's a lot of travel involved for you, but also you're dealing, I sense, with a whole range of different people, from designers at one end through to your team, through to the factories and suppliers, and then sort of passing on over to your colleagues in logistics as well. I've also never interviewed someone with such a passion for Excel. So there's a massive plug going on there. But not only have we spoken about the industry and your role in the industry, but also what you've learned as a leader as well. And I think that's really important for any career, for any opportunity in there. And I think you've moved from being perhaps quite a target-focused leader to being much more of a people-focused leader, with an understanding if you focus on the people, the targets will come. But if all you're focused on is the targets, you're not leading the people. And I think that's important for anybody who's going to develop in their career, because they are probably going to move into leadership or management positions. So thank you for all of that. It's been really interesting. There's one final question, actually, I'd like to ask, which we often do, which is about passing on the baton of careers experience. And so if there's perhaps one other person you could think of whose career we should unwrap, somebody who would bring real insights into a career journey, who might you recommend we speak to?
So I think that one of my greatest friends is called Borian. Borian is now the CEO of an energy company based in Saudi Arabia. And we are friends since over 30 years from Milan. And he was, and he still is, very humble person that had a phenomenal career. So I definitely think that he's one of my inspiration. That's why I'm mentioning him.
Okay, well, Borian is on our target list then. Antonio, thank you so much for sharing all of your experience, your career journey, but also really good insights into what it might feel like into working in the fashion industry. And also importantly, the routes into it are varied. If you've got a passion, then there's a route and you can play a role in industry if that's what interests you. So Antonio, thank you very much for joining us on Careers Unwrapped.
This podcast is sponsored by We Are Futures. To find out more about We Are Futures and how we can introduce your brand, business, or organization to the mass markets of tomorrow, visit www.wearefutures.com. Make sure to search for Careers Unwrapped in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Remember to click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at We Are Futures, thanks for listening.